A millionaire sees his infertile ex-wife begging on the street, holding hands with two twin boys who look exactly like him. His heart stops. She vanished from his life years ago after doctors said they could never have children. Now here she is, broken and homeless, with his eyes staring back at him. Were those children ever a coincidence, or a secret kept from him all these years? And what happens when he confronts her, and the truth about their past begins to unravel? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. And if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Cole Ashford stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Manhattan conference room, his reflection a dark silhouette against the morning sky. Behind him, his executive team filed out quietly, their footsteps muffled by thick carpet. The meeting had been another victory. His stargazing app's latest update would revolutionize how people viewed the night sky. But the triumph felt hollow. He loosened his tie, letting out a slow breath that fogged the glass. Despite the empire he'd built, the billions in his accounts, and the constant praise from the tech world, something gnawed at him. An emptiness he couldn't name. "Mr. Ashford?" His assistant hovered by the door. "Your car is waiting." "Cancel it," Cole said, surprising himself. "I need some air." The lobby's rotating glass doors spilled him onto the busy sidewalk. The spring morning was crisp, with sunshine warming the cool air. Cole pulled his designer jacket closer, more out of habit than necessity. People rushed past, their faces buried in their phones, many probably using his app, he thought with a touch of irony. The noise of the city wrapped around him as he walked, horns honking, fragments of conversation, the rumble of the subway beneath his feet. Each step took him further from his usual routine, and something in his chest loosened slightly. He couldn't remember the last time he'd just walked. As he rounded the corner near the 23rd Street station, the aroma of fresh coffee drifted through the air. A modest cart stood on the sidewalk, its wooden frame weathered but clean. Hand-painted stars decorated its sides, and a cardboard sign hung from the awning. "Starlight Brew, coffee with a wish." Cole's steps slowed. A woman stood behind the cart, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, wisps framing her face as she smiled at customers. Two young boys sat at a small folding table nearby, their hands moving quickly as they folded colored paper into intricate stars. The world tilted sideways. Harper. The name hit him like a physical blow. She looked different, thinner, with fine lines around her eyes that hadn't been there before, but unmistakably herself. The same gentle hands that had once traced constellations on his skin, now wrapped around paper coffee cups. The same soft smile that had once been his alone now offered warmth to strangers. Cole's heart hammered against his ribs. He took an unsteady step backward, nearly colliding with a passerby. The boys at the table looked up at the commotion, and his breath caught in his throat. Their eyes, one green, one brown, each of them, just like his own. Identical twins, about 10 years old. Their faces held echoes of his own childhood photos, but softened by Harper's features. They wore matching blue t-shirts with paper stars pinned to their chests, and their curious gazes pierced straight through him. Cole stumbled back another step, his legs moving without conscious thought. The world narrowed to a tunnel, memories crashing through the carefully constructed walls in his mind. Harper's tears the night she left. His mother's cold voice. "She's gone, Cole. It's for the best." The stars they'd watched together, now forever changed. He turned sharply, almost running around the corner. His hands shook as he leaned against the brick wall of a building, trying to steady his breathing. People passed by, giving him concerned looks, but he barely noticed them. 10 years. The boys were 10 years old. After a few minutes, Cole forced himself to move. He circled the block, his mind racing. When he reached the opposite side of the street from the coffee cart, he stopped. Harper was laughing with a customer, her head thrown back slightly, the sound carrying faintly across the traffic. One of the boys, his sons, his mind whispered incredulously, showed a finished paper star to an elderly woman, who clapped in delight. A bookstore's awning offered shelter, and Cole ducked inside. The quiet atmosphere wrapped around him like a blanket, but it couldn't calm his racing thoughts. He moved mechanically through the aisles until he found himself in the astronomy section. His fingers traced the spines of books he could quote by heart. "Can I help you find anything?" a clerk asked. Cole shook his head, pulled his hoodie lower over his face, and made his way back to the entrance. Through the window, he could still see the coffee cart. Still see them. He waited until there was a line at the cart, then slipped across the street. With his hood up and head down, he joined the queue. Harper was focused on making drinks, and the boys were absorbed in their paper folding. When he reached the front, he ordered quietly, dropping cash in the tip jar before taking his coffee and retreating quickly. The cup was warm in his hands, decorated with hand-drawn stars. The coffee inside was perfect, just like she used to make it. Hours later, Cole stood in his penthouse observatory, surrounded by state-of-the-art telescopes and monitoring equipment. The city lights sparkled below, but his eyes were fixed on the night sky above. Two particular stars drew his gaze, ones he'd been tracking for years, their coordinates permanently etched in his memory. They were binary stars, forever circling each other, unnamed and unclaimed in the official star registry. He'd discovered them the week after Harper left, during one of his sleepless nights. Now, as he stared at their steady light, his coffee cup from Starlight Brew sat empty on the desk beside him, its hand-drawn stars a pale echo of the real ones above. For the first time in 10 years, the void inside him had a name. The next morning, Cole stood before his closet, pushing aside tailored suits worth thousands. His hands found worn jeans he barely remembered owning, a plain gray hoodie, and a navy baseball cap. The reflection in his mirror showed a different man, someone approachable, ordinary. Someone who might stop for coffee at a street cart without drawing attention. His heart raced as he approached the Starlight Brew cart at precisely 9 a.m. The morning crowd had thinned, leaving only a few scattered customers. Harper stood behind the counter, arranging paper cups with practiced efficiency. She wore a faded blue apron decorated with hand-painted constellations, her hair pulled back in a loose braid. The twins sat cross-legged on a blanket nearby, hunched over what looked like a battered telescope toy. One boy, Aiden, Cole guessed from his quieter demeanor, carefully adjusted the lens while his brother Theo chattered excitedly, pointing at something in a worn notebook. Cole joined the short line, keeping his cap low. When he reached the counter, Harper's smile was polite but distant. No recognition flickered in her eyes. "Good morning," she said. "What can I get you?" "Just black coffee," Cole managed, his voice carefully neutral. He'd practiced in the mirror, pitching it slightly higher than his usual tone. "Sure thing." Harper turned to pour his drink. "That'll be $3. As she handed him the cup, Theo bounded up to the cart, clutching a bright yellow paper star. "Here," he announced, holding it out to Cole. "We give these to new customers. They're wish stars." Cole accepted the delicate creation, careful not to crush it. "Thank you," he said softly. "I'm Ash." "I'm Theo, and that's my brother Aiden." Theo pointed to where Aiden remained focused on the telescope. "Do you like stars? We love them. Mom knows everything about them." Harper's cheeks colored slightly. "Theo, honey, let the gentleman enjoy his coffee." But Cole found himself kneeling to examine the telescope. "That's quite a setup you have there." Aiden finally looked up, his mismatched eyes serious. "It's old, but we can still see some things. The moon, sometimes. When it's not cloudy," Theo added, "and when the city lights aren't too bright." Cole nodded, remembering similar challenges from his own childhood stargazing attempts. "The city does make it harder," he agreed. Harper watched their interaction, her expression guarded but not unfriendly. Something flickered across her face, uncertainty perhaps, but she masked it quickly. The next morning, Cole returned at the same time. Harper's eyebrows lifted slightly in recognition as he approached. "Black coffee again?" "Please." This time, both boys were at their table, surrounded by colored paper and astronomy books from the library. Theo waved enthusiastically. "Ash, come see what we're making." Cole spent 15 minutes watching them demonstrate their star-folding technique. Aiden explained the mathematical principles behind the folds with surprising precision, while Theo focused on choosing the perfect color combinations. The pattern continued the following day. Cole arrived, ordered his coffee, and found himself drawn into the boys' world. Aiden showed him a simple coding game on a worn tablet, his eyes lighting up when Cole offered some basic programming suggestions. Theo proudly displayed his latest drawings, spaceships and astronauts floating among carefully rendered stars. Harper remained in the background, attentive but distant. Cole caught her watching sometimes, her expression thoughtful. She was different from the woman he'd known, harder in some ways, softer in others. When customers brought their children, her entire face would transform with warmth. During a quiet moment, Cole overheard her telling the boys a story about the stars. Her voice carried the same gentle cadence he remembered from years ago, weaving tales of cosmic adventures and celestial mysteries. "The explorer father traveled through the galaxy," she said, mapping new constellations and sending messages through starlight to those he loved on Earth. The boys listened raptly, though they'd clearly heard the story before. Cole's chest tightened as he recognized elements of tales Harper had once shared with him during their late-night stargazing sessions. Theo tugged at his sleeve, holding up a small hand-bound book. "This is Mom's best story. She made it herself." The book's cover read, "Mom's Star Stories," in careful calligraphy. Simple but beautiful illustrations decorated each page, showing a lone figure among the stars, reaching toward Earth. The explorer father, sending love across the cosmos to his family below. Cole purchased the book with trembling hands, tucking it carefully into his jacket pocket. That evening, in his penthouse, Cole sat at his desk with multiple screens glowing before him. His fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up records and databases. Harper's name appeared in various documents, rental agreements, temporary jobs, school registrations for the boys. She'd never changed her surname from Ellison, the name she'd had when they met. But the twins' birth certificates revealed nothing about their father. The space was blank, as though that part of their story had been deliberately erased. Cole's security system held archives of his personal data stretching back years. He found himself opening old text messages, each one a punch to the gut. "I miss watching the stars with you. Please call me back. It's important. I know your mother said, but we need to talk." His finger hovered over a folder marked Voicemail Archives, 2013. The timestamp matched the week Harper disappeared. With a deep breath, he clicked play. Harper's voice filled the room, younger and shakier than now. "Cole, I needed to tell you something, but..." The message cut off abruptly, leaving only static and silence. Cole sat back, running his hands over his face. The evidence of their past life together glowed on the screens around him. Fragments of a relationship severed too soon, secrets left unspoken. He pulled up his calendar app. Tomorrow's date seemed to pulse on the screen as he marked it with a single word: truth. In his pocket, the yellow paper star from Theo crinkled softly. On his desk, Harper's storybook lay open to a page showing the explorer father finally turning his ship toward home. Days later, the morning sun cast long shadows across the quiet street as Cole approached the Starlight brew cart earlier than usual. His heart thundered in his chest, each step feeling heavier than the last. The familiar setup looked different in the pale dawn light. more vulnerable somehow. Aiden and Theo were already there, carefully arranging cups and supplies with the serious concentration of children trusted with important tasks. Theo hummed softly while Aiden methodically counted napkins, their movements showing the routine of long practice. Theo spotted him first. "Ash, you're super early today." "Morning, boys," Cole said, his voice tight with tension. He glanced around, noting Harper's absence. "Mom's getting fresh pastries," Aiden explained without looking up from his counting. "She always goes to the bakery first thing." Cole nodded, shifting his weight from foot to foot. The waiting felt endless, though only minutes passed. Then he heard footsteps approaching and turned to see Harper walking toward them, carrying a box of pastries. Her eyes were focused on the ground, a small smile playing on her lips, until she looked up. The pastry box slipped from her fingers, hitting the pavement with a dull thud. Her face went slack with shock as Cole slowly reached up and pulled off his hoodie, revealing his familiar features in the morning light. "It's me," he said simply, his voice barely above a whisper. The color drained from Harper's face so quickly that Cole instinctively stepped forward, worried she might faint. She gripped the edge of the cart to steady herself, her knuckles white with tension. "Boys!" she called out, her voice remarkably steady despite her pale complexion. "Could you please check on the pastries I dropped? Make sure none are damaged?" The twins hurried to the fallen box, giving Harper the moment she needed to pull Cole aside, behind the cart where they couldn't be overheard. Her whole body trembled as she faced him. "Why now?" The words seemed to escape her involuntarily, barely audible. Cole's carefully prepared speech evaporated. Instead, raw questions spilled out. "The boys, they're mine, aren't they? Why did you disappear? Why didn't you tell me?" Harper wrapped her arms around herself, as if trying to hold herself together. "Your mother," she began, her voice shaking. "She came to me that day, told me I would destroy everything you'd worked for. Said I was nothing but a distraction, that I'd ruin your reputation in the tech world." She drew a shuddering breath. "She had documents, Cole. Press releases ready to go. Stories about my unstable background, my family's history. And you thought I knew about this?" Cole's voice cracked with disbelief. "At first, no. But when I tried to reach you," Harper fumbled in her pocket, pulling out a worn leather wallet. From inside, she extracted a folded piece of paper, carefully protected in a plastic sleeve. As she unfolded it, Cole recognized the grainy black and white image of an ultrasound. "I came to your building 3 times, she continued. "Each time, the staff turned me away. Said they had strict instructions." Her fingers traced the edge of the ultrasound photo. "The last time, they threatened to call security. I was 4 months pregnant, scared, and believed you had chosen your mother's vision for your life over." She gestured helplessly at herself. "I never knew," Cole whispered, staring at the ultrasound photo, his first glimpse of the sons he hadn't known existed. "I never knew you were pregnant. Mother said you'd left for a better opportunity, that you'd moved on." "I tried everything I could think of," Harper said. "Letters that came back unopened, messages that were never returned. Eventually, I ran out of ways to reach you." She glanced over at the twins, who were carefully repacking the pastries. "And then I had them to think about." Cole followed her gaze, seeing the boys, his boys, with new eyes. Aiden's careful precision, so like his own. Theo's creative energy, reminiscent of Harper's artistic spirit. How had he not recognized himself in them immediately? "They don't know who you are," Harper said softly. "Please, I need time to figure out how to tell them. This will change their whole world." Cole nodded slowly. "Of course. Yes. I understand." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of uncertainty that Harper remembered from their past. "How do you want to handle this?" Harper watched the twins for a moment before responding. "Give me a little time. Let me process this first." Figure out the right way to explain everything." "Okay," Cole agreed, his voice gentle. "Whatever you need." They moved back to the cart, where the boys had salvaged most of the pastries and arranged them neatly on display. The morning passed in a blur of customers and coffee, with Cole staying nearby, unable to tear himself away. He watched the easy interaction between Harper and their sons, seeing 10 years of shared history in every casual touch, every inside joke, every loving glance. As the day wound down and the last customers drifted away, they sat together at the small table near the cart. The boys perched on nearby chairs, contentedly munching on leftover cookies while Harper and Cole sat in charged silence. Finally, Harper spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "You really never knew?" Cole shook his head, his eyes fixed on his coffee cup. "Not until I saw them. Their eyes." He looked up at her, just like mine. Harper nodded, understanding flooding her expression. After a moment, she said, "We need to talk more. Somewhere private." "My rooftop," Cole suggested. "Tomorrow night. The view of the stars is..." He trailed off, remembering how they used to spend hours stargazing together. "Yes," Harper agreed softly. "Tomorrow night." They sat there as the evening deepened, watching their sons share cookies and dreams, the weight of unspoken words hanging between them like constellations waiting to be mapped. The next day, the elevator doors opened directly into Cole's penthouse, and Theo's gasp echoed through the marble foyer. Aiden's eyes widened as he took in the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of Manhattan's glittering skyline. Harper stood behind them, her hand resting protectively on each boy's shoulder. "This is where you live?" Theo asked, his voice filled with wonder. Cole nodded, suddenly self-conscious of the stark luxury surrounding them. The space felt colder now, seeing it through their eyes. "Yes, but the best part is upstairs. Would you like to see it?" Both boys nodded eagerly. Cole led them to a spiral staircase that wound up to the observatory. As they climbed, Aiden traced the metallic railing with careful fingers, while Theo bounded up 2 steps at a time. The observatory took up the entire top floor, its domed glass ceiling offering an unobstructed view of the night sky. Complex telescopes stood on automated mounts, and multiple screens displayed star charts and astronomical data. A comfortable seating area with plush chairs and sofas faced east, where the moon was just beginning to rise. "Wow," Aiden breathed, immediately drawn to the largest telescope. His fingers hovered near the controls, not quite touching. "Is this a Celestron CGXL?" Cole blinked in surprise. "You know your telescopes." "He reads everything he can find about astronomy," Harper explained softly. "The library has a whole section." "Can we look through it?" Theo interrupted, practically bouncing with excitement. "Of course." Cole stepped forward, making small adjustments to the telescope's position. "I want to show you something special." He checked the coordinates on a nearby screen, then gestured for Aiden to look through the eyepiece. "See that bright star? The one with the slight blue tint?" Aiden nodded, his eyes still pressed to the telescope. "I've been tracking that star for years," Cole continued. "And the one next to it, too. They're both unclaimed, unregistered in any star catalog." "Why those ones?" Theo asked, waiting impatiently for his turn. Cole's eyes met Harper's briefly before he answered. "Sometimes certain stars just catch your attention. They feel important somehow." Theo took his turn at the telescope while Aiden wandered over to one of the computer screens, studying the scrolling data with intense concentration. "Is this the code for your app?" he asked. "The one that helps people find constellations?" "Yes," Cole replied, moving to stand beside him. "Would you like to see how it works?" Aiden's face lit up. "Could you? I've been trying to learn coding, but..." "We can't afford a computer at home," Harper finished quietly. "He uses the ones at school when he can." Cole pulled up a chair for Aiden and began explaining the basic structure of the program. The boy followed along easily, asking surprisingly sophisticated questions about algorithms and star tracking functions. Meanwhile, Theo had discovered Cole's collection of astronomy books and was flipping through one filled with spectacular nebula photographs. "I want to write a book like Mom's someday," Theo announced, "but with real pictures of space too, and stories about the stars." "Mom's stories are the best," Aiden agreed, temporarily distracted from the code. "She tells us about the explorer father who travels through the stars, watching over his children." Cole's throat tightened as he glanced at Harper, who had moved to stand by the windows, her back to them. "Can stars belong to people?" Theo asked suddenly, looking up from his book. Cole took a deep breath. "Some stars were always yours," he said carefully. "We just forget to name them." He turned back to the computer, logging into his private system. With a few keystrokes, he pulled up the registration page for the 2 stars he'd been tracking. His fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment before he began typing. "What are you doing?" Aiden asked, leaning closer to see the screen. "Giving these stars their proper names," Cole replied. He entered the first name, Aiden Ashford, then the second, Theo Ashford. With a click, he submitted the registrations. "Those are our names!" Theo exclaimed, rushing over to see. "You named stars after us?" "They were always your stars," Cole said softly. "They just needed to be claimed." Harper made a small sound by the window, and when Cole looked over, he saw her wiping tears from her cheeks. The boys were too excited to notice, crowding around the computer to see their names officially listed in the star registry. "Can we see them again through the telescope?" Theo asked. "Our stars?" Cole adjusted the telescope's position once more, helping each boy locate their namesake stars. He showed them how to use the automated tracking system to keep the stars in view as the Earth rotated. Aiden quickly grasped the technical aspects, while Theo spun elaborate stories about what might be happening on planets circling their stars. All too soon, Harper checked her watch and announced it was time to go. The boys protested, but she remained firm. "You have school tomorrow, and it's already past your bedtime." To Cole's surprise, both boys hugged him before heading toward the elevator. The gesture was natural, unforced, as if they'd known him far longer than a few days. Harper lingered behind as they waited by the elevator doors. "You didn't have to do that," she said quietly, referring to the star registration. "I did," Cole replied simply. A smile spread across Harper's face, the first real smile he'd seen since discovering her at the coffee cart. It transformed her features, bringing back the warmth he remembered from their past. "We'll be back tomorrow," she said. "The boys want to see the stars again." Cole watched as the elevator doors closed, taking his family away once more. But this time was different. This time, they were coming back. He turned to look up through the observatory's glass dome, where 2 particular stars twinkled in the vast expanse of space. No longer unclaimed, no longer unnamed, no longer alone. The afternoon sun streamed through the penthouse windows as Cole moved purposefully through the space, preparing for his family's visit. He arranged plates of cookies and fruit on the kitchen counter, making sure to include the chocolate chip ones Theo had mentioned loving. Everything had to be perfect. In his bedroom closet, Cole pulled out a carefully preserved box. Inside lay a telescope, not as advanced as his current equipment, but special in its own way. Harper had given it to him for their first anniversary, saving for months to afford it. He ran his fingers over the worn brass, remembering how they'd spent countless nights on their tiny apartment balcony, sharing dreams under the stars. "Will you be needing dinner service this evening, Mr. Ashford?" his housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, asked from the doorway. Cole looked up, realizing he was smiling. "No, thank you. We'll manage with the snacks." Mrs. Chen nodded, a gentle warmth in her eyes. In 15 years of service, she had never seen her employer smile like this, like a weight had lifted from his shoulders. Cole carried the telescope upstairs to the observatory, setting it beside the modern equipment. He checked his watch. They would arrive soon. His heart felt lighter than it had in years. The elevator chimed right on time. Theo burst out first, followed closely by Aiden, both boys making a beeline for the spiral staircase. "Careful on the stairs," Harper called after them, but they were already halfway up, their excited voices echoing down. Cole started to follow, but noticed Harper hadn't moved from the foyer. She was staring at something on his bookshelf, a silver-framed photograph from a charity gala 2 years ago. In it, Cole stood beside his mother, both perfectly poised in formal wear. Elaine Ashford's smile was practiced, her hand possessively on Cole's arm. Harper's expression changed, her earlier warmth replaced by something guarded. Her eyes drifted to his desk, where several documents lay spread out. The letterhead was clearly visible. Ashford Family Foundation, Quarterly Budget Review. At the top, "Attention, Elaine Ashford, Board Chair," stood in bold type. "Does she still come here?" Harper's voice was barely above a whisper, but Cole heard the tension in it. He could have deflected, but he owed her honesty. "She calls once a week, has a standing appointment with my assistant every Thursday." He paused, watching Harper's shoulders stiffen. "I haven't really dealt with it." Harper turned to face him, her eyes sharp with remembered pain. "You haven't dealt with it?" Her voice rose slightly. "After everything she did, everything she admitted to doing, you still let her run your life?" "It's not like that," Cole protested, but the words felt hollow even to him. "Really?" Harper gestured to the documents. "She's still chair of your foundation, still has access to your home, still controls your public image." Her hands were shaking now. "Do you have any idea what she said to me that day? What she threatened to do?" Cole stepped forward, but Harper backed away. "She told me she would destroy any chance I had of a career. Said she'd make sure I never saw you again. That my situation would ruin everything you'd worked for." Harper's voice cracked. "And when I tried to come back, to tell you about the babies, her people turned me away. Every time." "I didn't know," Cole said quietly. "That's the problem, isn't it?" Harper's eyes filled with tears. "You never knew because you never questioned her, never stood up to her, and you still haven't." Above them, they could hear the boys chattering excitedly about the telescope. The sound only seemed to heighten Harper's distress. "I can't do this," she said, wrapping her arms around herself. "I can't let my children get close to you, get hurt, if you're still under her control. They've been through too much already. Harper, please. We need to take a break from visiting." Her voice was firm despite the tears. "Until you figure out what matters more, your mother's approval or your family." "They're my sons," Cole said, his voice rough with emotion. "Yes, they are. Which makes this decision even more important." Harper moved toward the stairs. "Boys, time to go." "But Mom, we just got here." Theo's voice floated down. "Now please." The twins appeared at the top of the stairs, confusion clear on their faces. They trudged down slowly, picking up on the tension between the adults. "Is everything okay?" Aiden asked quietly. Harper managed a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "We just need to head home early today. Say goodbye to Mr. Ashford." The formality of Mr. Ashford hit Cole like a physical blow. The boys gave awkward waves, clearly sensing something was wrong but not understanding what. Harper ushered them into the elevator without another word. As the doors closed, Cole caught a final glimpse of Harper's face, hurt, angry, and somehow still loving. Then they were gone. Cole climbed the stairs to his observatory slowly, each step heavy. The snacks lay untouched on the table. The old telescope stood next to its modern counterparts, a bridge between past and present that now felt impossibly wide. He sank into his chair and pulled up his stargazing app. There, glowing steadily on the screen, were two particular stars, labeled Aiden Ashford and Theo Ashford. So close on his screen, yet as unreachable as their namesakes. Cole stared at those names for a long moment. Then he pressed the intercom button on his desk. "Sarah, I need you to do something immediately." His voice was steady, determined. "Cancel my mother's access to everything. The penthouse, the office, the foundation accounts, all of it. Starting now." The morning sun cast long shadows across the city streets as Harper walked her sons to school. The shelter district wasn't the prettiest part of town, but she'd made it work for them, like she always had. Aiden and Theo walked on either side of her, their backpacks bouncing with each step, but their usual chatter was subdued. "Mom." Theo finally broke the silence, his voice small. "Did we do something wrong yesterday? At Mr. Ashford's place?" Harper's heart clenched. She stopped walking and knelt down to their level, right there on the sidewalk. A few other parents and children streamed around them, heading toward the school building in the distance. "No, sweethearts, you didn't do anything wrong at all." She touched each of their cheeks gently. "Sometimes grown-ups have complicated things to figure out, but none of it is your fault." Aiden, ever observant, studied her face. "Is it because of the fancy office stuff on his desk? You looked upset when you saw it." Harper took a deep breath. "It's just complicated right now, but I promise you both, you did nothing wrong." They continued walking, the boys accepting her answer even if they didn't fully understand it. At the school gates, Harper hugged them both extra tight, watching as they disappeared into the building with their classmates. That evening, back at the shelter, Harper helped the boys with their homework at the small table near their window. The space was modest, just one room with 2 beds and a bathroom, but they'd made it homey with their drawings and paper stars hanging from strings. "Can we look for our stars tonight?" Theo asked, pushing aside his math worksheet. Harper glanced outside. The sky was surprisingly clear for the city. "Why not? Let's get creative." Together, they gathered cardboard from the recycling bin behind the shelter. Using scissors and tape from their school supplies, they fashioned a makeshift telescope. It wasn't much, just a long tube with a viewing hole, but the boys' eyes lit up as if it were the most sophisticated equipment in the world. They pushed the small table against the window and climbed up carefully. Aiden held the cardboard telescope while Theo consulted a star chart he'd drawn based on Cole's app. "There," Theo pointed excitedly. "That bright one. That's mine." "How do you know?" Harper asked, steadying them on the table. "Because it's exactly where Mr. Ashford showed us on his computer, and it feels like mine." Theo's certainty made Harper's eyes water. Aiden took his turn with the telescope. "I can see mine too. It's quieter than Theo's, but it's there." Harper watched them take turns, their faces glowing with wonder. Even through a cardboard tube, they saw magic in the sky, their own personal connections to the universe. She thought about Cole's gesture in naming those stars, how it had given the boys something permanent to hold on to. Meanwhile, across town, Cole walked through the halls of the boys' school, his heart pounding. He'd dressed casually again, jeans and a hoodie, and scheduled this visit during class hours to avoid any chance encounters. The guidance counselor's office was small but welcoming, with children's artwork covering the walls. "Mr. Ashford," the counselor greeted him warmly. "What can we do for you today?" Cole cleared his throat. "I'd like to make an anonymous donation for a new STEM lab." He pulled out some papers from his messenger bag. "I have the proposal here. The only condition is that it be named after 2 students, Aiden and Theo Ellison." The counselor's eyes widened at the figure on the proposal. "This is extremely generous. May I ask why those particular students?" "They have potential," Cole said simply. "I want to make sure they have every opportunity to develop it." After signing the necessary paperwork, all through his foundation's anonymous giving program, Cole couldn't help himself. He walked past their classrooms, staying close to the wall. Through the windows, He caught glimpses of them. Aiden focused intently on his computer screen during tech class. Theo painting enthusiastically during art. His sons, his boys, both so talented in their own ways. He left before they could spot him, but not before arranging one more thing through the school's administration. A new after-school space club with 2 spots specifically reserved and funded for the Ellison twins. That night, Harper sat at the shelter's common room table while the boys slept. A flyer lay before her, delivered by the school that afternoon. New after-school space club. Special enrollment available for Aiden and Theo Ellison. The paper trembled slightly in her hands. She knew immediately who was behind it. It was exactly the kind of thing Cole would do. Quiet, thoughtful, focused on the boys' interests. No grand gestures, no public announcements. Just creating opportunities for their sons to grow. Her phone buzzed with a text. Cole's name appeared on the screen. "I'm not asking to be in your life on my terms. I just want to show you who I am without her." Harper stared at the message for a long time. Her thumb hovered over the delete button, but she couldn't press it. Instead, she set the phone down and reached into her bag, pulling out the worn journal where she'd written all their star stories over the years. The pages were filled with tales of an explorer father who charted the stars, who sent messages through constellations, who loved his children from afar until he could find his way back to them. She'd written these stories to give her boys hope, to help them believe in love even when it seemed impossible. Harper turned to a blank page and picked up her pen. Slowly, carefully, she began to write again. Once there was a father who lost his way among the stars. A few days passed in a blur of city lights and worry. Theo's fever wasn't dangerous, but it kept Harper pacing the shelter's narrow hallways at night, her hand constantly checking his forehead. The small room felt even smaller with one of her boys sick, Aiden sleeping fitfully in the bed next to his brothers. "Mom," Theo mumbled through half-closed eyes, "can you tell me a star story?" Harper sat on the edge of his bed, running her fingers through his damp hair. "Of course, sweetheart. Which one would you like?" "The one about the explorer father finding his way through the storm." Her throat tightened, but she began the familiar tale, her voice soft in the dim room. Aiden pretended to sleep, but she could tell he was listening too, his breathing too measured to be natural. That night, after both boys had finally drifted off, Harper couldn't stay still. She told the night supervisor she needed some air, and stepped out into the cool evening. The city hummed around her as she walked, her feet carrying her through familiar streets without conscious direction. Before she realized it, she was standing across from Cole's building. The gleaming tower stretched toward the sky, its upper floors lost in low-hanging clouds. Light shone from what she knew was his penthouse observatory. Harper stood there for a long time, watching that distant glow, remembering the wonder in her son's eyes when they'd visited, but she didn't go in. Instead, she turned away, wrapping her arms around herself as she headed back to the shelter. Meanwhile, in his classroom during lunch break, Aiden sat at his desk, carefully printing words onto lined paper. His handwriting was neat and precise, just like the code he loved to write. "Dear Mr. Ashford," he wrote, then crossed it out. "Dear Cole," he tried again. "You said the stars were ours. We want you there. Parents' night is next Thursday at 7 p.m. We're showing our science projects. Mine is about your stargazing app's code structure. I hope you can come." He folded the paper carefully and approached Ms. Chen, his STEM teacher, after class. "Could you please make sure this gets to Mr. Cole Ashford?" he asked quietly. "It's important." Ms. Chen, who had received specific instructions about the Ellison twins from the administration, nodded knowingly. "I'll make sure it reaches him, Aiden." When Cole received the letter 2 days later, he had to sit down at his desk. His hands shook slightly as he unfolded the paper, reading the careful words again and again. The simplicity of the request hit him hard. "We want you there." No manipulation, no hidden agenda, just a child reaching out to his father. He spent the next several days preparing, throwing himself into it with the same intensity he usually reserved for product launches. He bought a navy blue tie that Theo had pointed at in a store window during one of their visits, saying it looked like the night sky. He gathered data from his app about the twins' named stars, creating beautiful visualizations that showed their positions throughout the year. Cole printed everything on high-quality paper, carefully selecting images that would complement Aiden's project about coding. He found himself smiling as he worked, imagining Aiden's face when he saw the technical details of the app he'd been so curious about. The evening before parents' night, Cole stood in his penthouse bedroom, adjusting the tie in the mirror. His phone buzzed on the dresser, his mother's name appearing on the screen. The same weekly call, right on schedule. Cole stared at the phone, remembering Harper's face when she'd seen those documents on his desk, the way the warmth had drained from her eyes. He let the phone ring. Instead of answering, he pulled out his own phone, an older model he kept charged in his desk drawer. There was only one saved voicemail on it, dated over 10 years ago. Harper's voice filled the quiet room as he played it. "Cole, I needed to tell you something, but..." A pause, a shaky breath. "I don't know how to..." "Your mother said..." Another pause, longer this time. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." The message ended there, but Cole heard it differently now. What he'd once interpreted as rejection now rang with clear sorrow and fear. He could hear the tremor in her voice, the sound of someone trying to be brave while their world crumbled around them. Cole looked at himself in the mirror again. The man staring back at him wore the same expensive suit, the same carefully styled hair, but something was different. In his eyes, he saw echoes of the person he used to be. The young programmer who stayed up late coding with Harper beside him, who dreamed of mapping the stars not for profit, but for the pure joy of discovery. That younger version of himself would never have let anyone come between him and the people he loved. He would never have accepted his mother's control as the price of success. Cole reached up and loosened the tie slightly, making it less perfect, more human. Tomorrow night, he would walk into that school not as a tech billionaire or as Elaine Ashford's son, but as something far more important, a father who was finally finding his way home. He looked at his reflection one last time, seeing clearly now how much of himself he'd buried under years of quiet compliance. It was time to let that man go, the one who let his mother dictate his life, who missed 10 years with his children, who hid behind success instead of fighting for love. His phone buzzed again with another call from his mother. This time, Cole didn't even look at it. Instead, he turned away from the mirror and walked to his desk, where Aiden's letter lay open, those simple words saying everything that mattered. "We want you there." The next day, the evening air held a crisp autumn bite as Harper walked with her sons toward the school gymnasium. Aiden clutched his project board carefully, while Theo bounced alongside them, practically vibrating with excitement. Their footsteps echoed across the concrete, mixing with the distant sounds of cars and city life. As they approached the brightly lit entrance, Harper's heart beat a little faster. Other families streamed through the doors, parents with their arms around children's shoulders, siblings racing ahead, grandparents moving more slowly behind. The normalcy of it all made her chest ache. Inside, the gym hummed with activity. Fold-out tables lined the walls, covered with student projects. Clusters of families gathered in small groups, their laughter and chatter bouncing off the high ceiling. Harper helped the boys set up their display, her fingers trembling slightly as she smoothed the tablecloth. "Is it straight enough?" Aiden asked, adjusting the center panel of their presentation for the third time. "It's perfect," Harper assured him, but her eyes kept drifting to the entrance. Each time the door opened, her breath caught. Each time it wasn't Cole, she felt both relief and disappointment wash over her. Theo tugged at her sleeve. "Mom, look, Ms. Chen is starting to gather everyone." The STEM teacher was indeed gesturing for people to take their seats in the rows of chairs set up facing the presentation area. Harper helped the boys carry their materials to the front, where other students were lining up with their projects. As the twins took their place in line, Harper found a seat in the second row. She watched them whisper to each other, making last-minute adjustments to their notes. They looked so grown up in their matching button-down shirts, their mismatched eyes bright with anticipation. The presentations began. One by one, students shared their scientific discoveries and experiments. Harper barely heard them, her attention fixed on her sons, waiting their turn. When Miss Chen finally called their names, Harper sat up straighter, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Aiden and Theo stepped forward together, their project board now displayed on the easel. In bold letters across the top, their title read, "Can Stars Find Their Way Home?" Our project explores how constellations move through time, Aiden began, his voice clear and steady. We used data from real star tracking applications to show how stars that seem fixed actually travel across the sky. Theo picked up seamlessly where his brother left off. Sometimes stars that look far apart are actually part of the same family. They just need time to find each other again. They clicked through their slides, showing diagrams and charts. Harper recognized some of the visualizations. They were clearly inspired by Cole's app, though the boys had created their own versions with careful attention to detail. Then came the final slide. Harper's breath caught in her throat. There on the screen was a photograph of Cole's rooftop observatory, the dome gleaming under a starlit sky. Below it, in simple text, were the words, "Our Dad's Sky." A ripple of whispers moved through the audience. Harper heard someone behind her gasp softly. Her hands began to tremble again, and she pressed them flat against her thighs to steady them. The gym doors opened. Cole walked in slowly, deliberately. He wore a navy blue tie scattered with tiny silver stars, the one Theo had admired in the store window. Under his arm, he carried a rolled star chart, and his face held a quiet determination Harper hadn't seen in years. The room fell completely silent. Even the youngest children seemed to sense the weight of the moment. Cole made his way to the front of the room, his footsteps echoing in the stillness. "May I speak?" he asked Ms. Chen quietly. She nodded, stepping aside. Cole pulled out his phone. The audience watched, confused, as he pulled up a contact and hit the speaker button. The phone rang 3 times before a crisp, elegant voice answered. "Cole, this is an unusual time for you to call." "Hello, Mother," he said, his voice steady and clear. "I'm at my son's school. They're presenting a project about stars finding their way home." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. "Cole, whatever you think you're doing." "I'm done," he interrupted, still calm but firm. "I'm done letting you orbit my life like a cold sun. I have my own stars now." Without waiting for a response, Cole pulled the phone away from his ear. His finger hovered over the screen for a moment, then pressed down. A small contact-blocked notification appeared. The silence in the gym was absolute. Then Aiden and Theo moved as one, rushing toward Cole. He knelt down to meet them, the star chart falling forgotten to the floor as he wrapped his arms around them both. Aiden pressed his face into Cole's shoulder while Theo clung to his neck. "We knew you'd come," Aiden whispered, his voice muffled but clear in the quiet room. Harper stood slowly, her legs unsteady. She took one step, then another, moving toward the 3 figures embraced at the front of the room. Cole looked up as she approached, his eyes bright with unshed tears. He stayed on his knees, not in supplication, but in honesty, in humility. "I don't want to go back," he said softly, his voice carrying in the hushed gymnasium. "I want to start forward, with you, with them." Harper didn't speak. Words seemed inadequate for this moment, this turning point she'd dreamed of but never truly believed would come. Instead, she reached out and took his hand, her fingers intertwining with his. A soft clap started somewhere in the back of the room. It spread slowly at first, then faster, building into a gentle wave of applause that filled the gymnasium with its quiet approval. Days later, the morning sunlight filtered through the shelter's small window, casting warm patterns across Harper's face. She stirred, earlier than usual, her mind still processing the events of parents' night. The twins were already awake, whispering excitedly on their shared mattress across the room. Her phone buzzed softly. Harper reached for it, her heart skipping when she saw Cole's name on the screen. "Can I show you something today?" "Just us. No pressure." She stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. The boys watched her from their bed, trying to pretend they weren't watching. Harper took a deep breath, then typed, "Okay." They met Cole an hour later, after a quick breakfast of shelter-provided cereal. He was waiting in a modest sedan instead of his usual luxury car, dressed in jeans and a simple sweater. The boys piled into the back seat while Harper slid into the passenger side, noting how different everything felt from their previous encounters. Cole drove them away from Manhattan's bustling streets, crossing the bridge into Brooklyn. The neighborhood he chose was quieter, with tree-lined sidewalks and children's bikes chained to front railings. He parallel parked along a peaceful street where brownstones stood shoulder to shoulder like old friends sharing secrets. "Here we are," Cole said softly, killing the engine. He led them to a gate partially hidden by untamed ivy. The lock clicked open under his key, revealing a short path to a 4-story brownstone. The building showed its age proudly: weathered brick, slightly crooked shutters, windows that needed washing. But there was something inviting about it, something that whispered of possibility. Harper found herself drawn to the worn stone steps leading to the front door. Inside, dust motes danced in the streams of light filtering through dirty windows. The wallpaper, though faded, told stories of previous lives lived within these walls. High ceilings stretched above them, and original hardwood floors creaked beneath their feet. "Watch this," Theo called out, his voice echoing as he discovered how sound carried through the empty rooms. Aiden was already examining the built-in bookshelf that lined one wall, running his fingers along the aged wood. Cole gestured for Harper to follow him through the house. They passed through a kitchen with outdated appliances but good bones, a dining room with a bay window perfect for morning light, and finally reached the back door. The backyard welcomed them with overgrown charm. A broken stone path wound through untamed grass, leading to a clear space at the far end. Above, a perfect square of sky peeked through the surrounding buildings. "There's enough room for a telescope," Cole said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. Harper stood still, taking it all in. The peeling paint, the creaking floors, the wild garden. It was nothing like Cole's sleek penthouse with its modern furnishings and precise angles. This place was raw, unpolished, waiting. "Why not your penthouse?" she finally asked, turning to face him. Cole's eyes met hers, steady and sure. "I built that for who I thought I had to be," he replied. "This is for who I want to be." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a set of keys, old-fashioned brass ones that matched the character of the house. Without ceremony or grand gesture, he held them out to her. "If you want this to be ours," he said simply. No speeches, no conditions, no pressure. Just an offer, hanging in the space between them, like those dust motes in the sunlight. The boys' laughter echoed from inside the house, followed by the hollow sound of their footsteps on the wooden stairs. Harper tucked the keys into her pocket, neither accepting nor refusing yet, and they went back inside. They spent the afternoon exploring every corner of the brownstone. Aiden discovered a perfect nook under the stairs that he declared would be his reading spot. Theo was fascinated by the way light played through the stained glass window on the landing. They raced up and down the stairs, their energy filling the empty spaces with life. As evening approached, casting long shadows through the windows, Harper found herself walking the rooms alone. She ran her hands along the walls, imagining colors replacing the tired wallpaper. She stood in doorways, picturing furniture arrangements. In the kitchen, she could almost smell future family dinners. The boys had claimed the stairs as their temporary playground, their voices carrying through the house as they invented games involving space explorers and time travelers. Cole sat with them, listening to their stories and occasionally adding sound effects that made them laugh. Harper climbed to the second floor, opening doors and closets, mentally noting repairs and possibilities. In a small closet at the end of the hall, something caught her eye. A folded piece of paper tucked into the corner of a shelf. She recognized Cole's handwriting immediately. "We can build from the ground up this time." A smile spread across her face, slow and genuine. She folded the note carefully and slipped it into her pocket alongside the keys. Below, she could hear the boys asking Cole about the possibility of building a spaceship in the backyard. The light outside had grown dim, but Harper didn't reach for her phone to check the time. She didn't gather the boys to leave. Instead, she walked back downstairs to where her family sat on the steps, planning impossible adventures in their potential new home. The brownstone hummed with life on a warm Saturday morning, 3 weeks after they'd moved in. Paint fumes drifted down from the second floor, where Aiden and Theo were transforming their bedroom walls into a celestial landscape. They'd insisted on doing it themselves, though Cole had quietly laid down drop cloths when they weren't looking. "Mom," Theo's voice echoed down the stairs. "Is this the right blue for Neptune?" Harper looked up from her laptop, where she'd been typing steadily for the past hour. The kitchen table, a weathered oak piece they'd found at a local thrift store, was scattered with coffee mugs and notebook pages filled with her handwriting. "Hold on, sweetie," she called back. "I'll come check." Through the kitchen window, she could see Cole in the backyard, hunched over the old telescope they'd discovered in the basement. His sleeves were rolled up and tools were spread out on a blanket beside him. He'd been working on restoring it for days, treating each piece with careful attention. The house felt different from anywhere they'd lived before. The walls held warmth despite their imperfections, or perhaps because of them. Cardboard boxes still waited to be unpacked in corners, and some windows still needed washing. But there was something undeniably right about the controlled chaos. Harper saved her document, a new collection of star stories she'd finally felt inspired to write again, and headed upstairs. The boys' room was a masterpiece of childhood determination. Theo stood on a step stool, carefully painting what was indeed Neptune, while Aiden meticulously added stars using a stencil he'd created. "That's perfect," Harper said, studying Theo's work. "Just like the pictures we looked up. Dad showed us how to match colors using an app," Aiden explained, not looking up from his stars. The word dad still felt new on their tongues, but it came more naturally each day. Back downstairs, Harper returned to her writing, but found herself watching Cole through the window instead. He'd taught himself about telescope repair through online videos, determined to restore this piece of their new home's history. She watched as he carefully cleaned a lens, his movements precise and patient, so different from the rushed efficiency of his corporate life. The days had fallen into gentle rhythms. They took turns walking the boys to school, Cole on Mondays and Wednesdays, Harper on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and both of them on Fridays. The twins had started calling these Family Fridays, and they'd stop for hot chocolate at a small cafe on their way home. One evening, after the boys had gone to bed, Harper padded downstairs for a glass of water. She found Cole asleep at his desk in the small study they'd set up, his laptop screen still glowing with lines of code. His glasses had slipped down his nose, and his breathing was deep and even. Harper quietly retrieved a soft blanket from the living room, one they'd brought from the shelter, its familiar warmth a reminder of where they'd been. She draped it gently over his shoulders, careful not to wake him. But Cole stirred slightly, his eyes fluttering half open. "Harper," he murmured, his voice thick with sleep. The way he said her name held echoes of their past, but was somehow fuller now, weighted with everything they'd lived through. Later that night, they found themselves in the backyard. The telescope wasn't finished yet, but the sky was clear enough to see stars with the naked eye. They sat on the old wooden bench Cole had restored, listening to the symphony of city life mingling with nature. Distant sirens harmonizing with persistent cicadas, the rumble of subway trains underneath the rustle of leaves. They didn't speak for a long while. Harper watched the stars, while Cole seemed to be gathering his thoughts. When he finally turned to her, his expression was open, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen during their first time together. "I was never really whole without you," he said quietly. "Just successful." The words hung in the air between them, honest and unadorned. Harper studied his face in the dim light. She saw the lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before, the slight gray at his temples. But she also saw the boy she'd fallen in love with, the one who'd once spent hours showing her constellations and explaining the mathematics of starlight. Slowly, giving the moment the weight it deserved, she leaned toward him. Their lips met in a kiss that felt both familiar and entirely new. There was no urgency, no desperate need to prove anything. Just the quiet certainty of two people finding their way back to each other. The next morning brought the usual chaos of a school day. Harper woke to find the twins still deeply asleep, 15 minutes past their usual rising time. "Boys," she called, rushing to their room. "Come on, we're running late." Theo grumbled and pulled his blanket over his head, while Aiden slowly sat up, his hair sticking out in all directions. Harper hurried them through their morning routine, worried about missing the first bell. "Don't forget your science project," she reminded Aiden, who was still trying to zip up his backpack. "And my art folder," Theo added, searching under his bed. From downstairs, Cole's voice carried up. "Lunch is packed, and I fixed Theo's shoelace trick." Harper paused in the middle of helping Theo with his shirt buttons. The simple domesticity of the moment hit her all at once. Cole anticipating their needs, fixing the special way Theo liked his shoelaces tied, looped through twice, never once, preparing lunches without being asked. She felt tears welling up in her eyes as she made her way downstairs. Cole stood in the kitchen, 2 paper bags neatly packed with sandwiches and snacks, the boys' water bottles filled and ready. "You really are here," she said softly, her voice catching slightly. Cole looked up from where he was writing their names on the bags, his smile warm and steady. "I'm not going anywhere." The autumn evening wrapped the small Brooklyn bookstore in a cozy glow. String lights twinkled along the windows, and the shelves created intimate corridors where dozens of people sat and stood, all eyes focused on the small wooden stage at the front. Harper sat in a comfortable armchair, her newly published book, The Father Above the Clouds, open in her lap. The cover art showed a constellation in the shape of a family, with stars connected by delicate silver lines. In the front row, Aiden and Theo sat on either side of Cole, their faces bright with pride. Theo couldn't stop fidgeting with excitement, while Aiden maintained his usual composed demeanor, though his eyes never left his mother. Cole's hand rested gently on each boy's shoulder, grounding them all in the moment. Harper's voice carried through the store, warm and clear as she read the final pages. The little boy looked up at the night sky every evening, searching for signs of his father among the stars. She turned the page, revealing an illustration of 2 young boys with mismatched eyes peering through a telescope. He didn't know that sometimes the greatest distances aren't measured in light years, but in the space between 2 hearts finding their way to each other. The audience sat in rapt attention as Harper continued, her words painting pictures of hope and reunion. And when the stars whispered his name, the father came down, not from the sky, but from the place he'd always belonged, home. She closed the book softly, letting the final words settle over the room like stardust. Applause filled the bookstore, and Theo jumped up, clapping the loudest. Aiden smiled widely, a rare, full grin that matched his brother's enthusiasm. Cole's eyes were suspiciously bright as he joined the applause, watching Harper acknowledge the crowd with a gentle nod. The signing line formed quickly, snaking between the bookshelves. Harper sat at a small table, taking time with each person who approached. She wrote personal messages, asked about their own stories, and thanked them for coming. Cole and the boys helped the bookstore staff manage the line, handing out bookmarks and keeping things organized. A woman with silver-streaked hair reached the table, clutching her copy of the book close to her heart. "That story made me believe in people again," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Sometimes we forget that love can find its way back, even after years apart." Harper looked up, touched by the woman's words. "Thank you," she replied softly. "Sometimes the best stories are the ones that remind us what's possible." She signed the book with extra care, adding a small star beside her name. As the crowd began to thin, Cole made his way to Harper's side. His eyes held that quiet excitement she'd come to recognize, the look that meant he had something special to share. He pulled out his phone, opening his famous stargazing app. "I've been working on something," he said, his voice low and intimate. He tapped the screen a few times, navigating through familiar menus until he reached a new feature. "It's part of the next update." Harper leaned closer, watching as he activated a hidden mode in the app. The screen filled with stars, and slowly they began to connect. Lines drew themselves between points of light, forming a constellation she'd never seen before. 4 figures holding hands, their forms clear but graceful in their simplicity. Her finger touched the screen gently, tracing the lines that connected the figures. "It's us," she whispered, recognition flooding through her. The 2 smaller figures in the middle, the taller ones on either side. A family written in starlight. Cole nodded, his expression soft. "They've always been us," he said. "Even when we couldn't see it, we were there in the sky, waiting to be found." Later that night, they gathered in their backyard. The telescope, now fully restored, stood ready on its mount, aimed at the clear autumn sky. The air was crisp, but not cold, perfect for stargazing. They'd spread out blankets on the grass, and thermoses of hot chocolate waited nearby. Theo bounced from star to star, pointing out patterns with boundless enthusiasm. "Look, those 3 stars there, they make a perfect triangle. It could be a slice of pizza." Aiden, more methodical, adjusted the telescope with careful precision. "Actually, if you look through here, you can see that the middle star has a slightly different color. It's cooler than the others." The boys took turns creating their own constellations, weaving stories about each one. Theo found a dragon made of starlight, while Aiden mapped out what he claimed was a perfect representation of a computer mouse. Their laughter mixed with the night sounds of the city, creating its own kind of music. Harper sat on the old wooden bench, leaning against Cole's shoulder. She watched their sons exploring the sky, their faces illuminated by starlight and wonder. The moment felt perfect, but it also carried a hint of bittersweetness that prompted her to ask, "Do you ever regret not knowing them sooner?" Cole was quiet for a moment, his arm warm around her shoulders. Then he pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead, his answer thoughtful and measured. "Maybe I wasn't meant to find them sooner. Maybe I had to learn how to love them right." Above them, the stars shimmered in the dark velvet of the sky. Each point of light seemed to pulse with meaning, no longer distant and anonymous. These were their stars now, each one carrying a name, a story, a piece of their journey back to each other. If you enjoyed the story of Cole and Harper, I handpicked this next story that you will enjoy. If you enjoyed the story of Cole and Harper, I handpicked this next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.